Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisum, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com.
All right, so let me ask you something today. Do you find yourself saying things like, I just want to use my gifts for God, or I have a passion for songwriting, or I know that I'm called to do this, but I just don't know how? Or the biggie question for us all, how do I get my songs out there? Well, if you find yourself saying or even thinking these things, you're probably a true Christian songwriter, albeit a frustrated one at that. Well, if you are, I've got a great show for you today because we're going to unpack some of the realities of what it means to be a successful Christian songwriter these days, why I spend my life coaching them, and some very actionable next steps for you to take to begin answering the questions we just started with. If you're a worship leader hoping to have your songs lead the global church in praise and worship, you're in the right place. If you're a singer-songwriter hoping to broaden your audience by writing and singing poignant songs out of your life story, well, you're in the right place. If you're an aspiring CCM artist and songwriter, hey, you're in the right place. And if you're someone who doesn't perform or aspire to be an artist but want to become a powerful songwriter, you're in the right place too, because everything I'm going to share today will increase your understanding of what great songwriting is all about. You're in the right place, so stick with me, and we're going to get into some really helpful stuff here in just a quick minute. And I've got a free download for you today, so I think you're going to like that, and we'll get to that in just a bit. Now, we've just finished our 7th NCS Weekend Intensive, our fantastic Songwriters Workshop that we're actually renaming to become the Song Revolution Workshop, to be a very natural spinoff of this show and to help you understand that this event is all about you and your songs. Some of the comments people have said over and over about the weekend workshop are things like, I didn't expect it to be this good, and I've already gotten more in the first day than any other conference on songwriting I've ever been to. And then there's my absolute favorite, which is, I didn't know it was going to be so Christ-centered. Yeah, a little surprising, right? That a Christian songwriters workshop in Nashville should be centered on Jesus. Well, apparently we must be coming off too slick or perfect or something, or maybe because we talk about being a success, it seems like we've got some glitz and glamour going on here. Well, you guys just got to know that's not us. One songwriter said about the workshop this year that all we needed were ushers to receive the morning offering because we had just had revival. My favorite moment this past weekend, as we were finishing the workshop Saturday morning, was the couple of hours that we spent having our songwriters share their songs and then share their hearts about what the workshop meant to them. We had a lot of tears. A whole lot of love was definitely flowing in the room. It was kumbaya. It was a mountaintop. So let me personally invite you right now to go to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com/Song Revolution, even right this moment, to grab your spot for this one-of-a-kind event featuring some top industry influencers like John Mays of Centricity Music, who has wonderful artists like Lauren Daigle, Jason Gray, Johnny Diaz Carrollton, and Andrew Peterson. We're actually being hosted by John at Centricity for another barbecue dinner again on Thursday night, October 17. Jason Gray joined us for the dinner in January to share some of the new songs he's written for his new album. I think he's got a single out from that he shared with us. And Centricity songwriter Ross King joined us this past week to talk about life as a full-time Christian songwriter. It was just really off the charts, and we'll be announcing a little closer to the date who might be with us in October, although John Mays is plenty, let me tell you. We'll also have Curb Word Entertainment full-time songwriter and clinician Kenna Turner West. She's written 37 number one songs and counting, and she's just on fire when she teaches and coaches, as well as Tom Jackson, who is a live music producer, been around for a couple of decades, like me, who works with amazing Christian artists like Francesca Battistelli, Phillips Craig and Dean Lecrae, and so many more, as well as some iconic pop artists like Taylor Swift, Shawn Mendes, and more than we can even name. So guys, imagine coming into a safe, Christ-centered environment where you get 3 songs reviewed and then you get immediate personal feedback from top-shelf pro coaches that we're going to have on hand to help you get where you want to go in your songwriting, as well as world-class teaching, inspiration, and hanging out with amazing people like Tom Jackson, John Mays, Kenna Turner West, our NCS staff, and other aspiring songwriters from all over the world wanting what you want to get your songs heard. Now, you just can't find workshops like this all the time, and it's already filling up. It's the last one for the year, and you can save a lot on airfares and hotels if you book now. So again, jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com/Song Revolution for more information and for special discounts available for a limited time. And we always offer 15% off for groups of 2 or more, so bring your church's songwriting teams and worship leaders and start cranking out great songs like Bethel and Hillsong and all the great church-based ministries. I mean, this is an amazing event that you don't want to miss if you're committed to walking out your calling in a bigger way and ready to take a bold step to get the help, teaching, coaching, and connections that you need to become a successful Christian songwriter, which, by the way, is my topic for today, what it means to be a truly successful songwriter. I found that success really means different things to different people, but the spiritual motivation is usually the same on some deeper level to do what we feel so created by God to do. It's a natural welling up of the Holy Spirit in our own spirits, and I've referred a lot lately to Zephaniah 3:17, the one that says, "The Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty." And it says that the Lord himself is singing over us. I think we hear that in our hearts, and our songs echo the very voice of God, at least to ourselves, whether the world ever hears us or not, or ever cares. But it's just still cool to me that God rejoices and sings over us. And I think we're just longing to sing back. I mean, even before the new NBC series Songland launched, which I'm loving, by the way, I was already well aware that there's just a literal tsunami of interest in songwriting, and especially Christian songwriting, as God stirs up wave after wave of creativity and songwriters all over the world who are just longing to express His glory in some new ways, maybe to hear a new sound, to get their songs out there somehow to a broader audience. Well, I offer a free discovery call to anyone watching our new 30-minute webinar to see if personal coaching is their next right step. And they all say without fail that they want to use their gifts and get their songs out there. I've already talked about it a couple of times already in the show, but where is out there? How do you get your songs out there? What does that really mean? Is there an Oz-like place in an alternate universe with real live little munchkins and wizards and yellow brick roads where your songs are piped out over loudspeakers along shimmering paths like at Disney or Universal or your favorite resort? No, there is no such place as out there, and yet this is the universal cry of the Christian songwriter's heart, to be heard, appreciated, loved as a creator, and recognized for your contributions to the kingdom. Well, let me be quick to add that there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that desire. Politicians long to be heard and change society for the better. Surgeons long to save lives and hear hearts beating again. Athletes long to win medals and become commentators. Preachers long to preach to millions and write books. And Christian songwriters long to write something significant, something that can impact other people who not only need Jesus, but who don't even know they need Jesus, or those who long or need to worship Him like never before. You were born to be heard. Let's just settle that fact and stop all the false humility around not wanting to be rich or famous. I hear that a lot on these calls too. I just don't want to be rich or famous. I'm doing this for God. Well, I know you're doing it for God, but we're taught a weird false humility in church about riches and wealth that has held us back, I think, for a long, long time. Guys, I know the drill. I was there. I prayed those prayers. I said the mantra of God's will, God's will, God's will. And I worked hard to not want to be rich and famous. That's all relative anyway, right? But what was behind it was the nagging thought that I really wouldn't become published or rich or famous. What options are open to us, and how do we steward the opportunities that we've been sovereignly afforded from God? Well, that's what I want to zero in on in this episode, and to help bring even more clarity and understanding to the landscape of music and ministry, and how you can take some deliberate steps, even today, towards being the most successful you that you can be, right? God didn't create you to be Tomlin or me, right? I used to want to be Stephen Curtis Chapman. I'd like to have him on the show too. So Stephen, if you ever hear this, please come on the show. But I used to want to be him because he had a band and he had a bus and he had all those hit songs. But guess what? God made me to be John Chisum. So I'm just thankful today that I'm me. I hope that you can be thankful to be you. Oscar Wilde famously said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken." So I want to break it down into some explanations and try to help you get a handle on what to do next. The way I see it, confusion is cruel and clarity is kind. So let's try to get clear and get some fresh direction for you, okay? Does that sound good? I want to bring you some value today. If you've been following me on this show for any length of time, you know that I stumbled into Nashville many years ago to take a job that fell through and was homeless for a short period before meeting Bill Gaither and having the opportunity to grow as a songwriter. And that's just a break that you can't always get. And it set me on the path to even coaching you guys today. If it weren't for that, 30-something years ago, I wouldn't be here today talking to you about these things that can help you. So thank you, Mr. Gaither, for paying it forward. I quickly found out, though, that my sweet devotional songs were great for me in the prayer closet, but fell really short of making an impression on the Gaithers or anyone else. I had to step up my game if I wanted to be heard. I was writing 5 nights a week, doing odd jobs to survive, and I eventually started placing songs. I eventually kind of figured out what it took. And back in that day, more artists were open to listening to songs that pro songwriters created, but that's shifted a lot now. The landscape of music has changed really dramatically since we were pioneering in the 80s and 90s. Digitalization has shrunk the industry just like it has for book publishing, and it's now all about building your own tribe, your own fan base through your efforts on social media, even if you're not a performer. And I will talk a little bit about that in a bit. Frankly, a lot of songwriters are not interested in doing this work for whatever reasons. Maybe they're not performers and dream of staying home writing songs for Lauren Daigle to sing, but guys, that's just a fantasy. Lauren has her own team around her, and every artist is now a songwriter, whether they're really great at it or not. I don't know Lauren. I think she's amazing, and I don't know what part of the equation she is in her team, but she's surrounded by a tremendous team. It'd be fun to see her on Songland. Maybe that's the way we could get a song to Lauren is through Songland. But during our Song Revolution workshop times at Centricity with John Mays, he just openly shares the reality of modern songwriting and publishing and how challenging it is to break through. Craig Adams, who's creative director for Lifeway Worship, was a clinician for us in April at our workshop, and he spoke very directly to what could be discouraging at best about the state of the entire music industry since the whole tech thing changed it on everybody. There are crazy consequences for anyone creating music if Spotify and iTunes become record labels like Amazon and YouTube and Netflix have gotten into creating movies and series. But why should any of this surprise us? Think about it. Culture shifts dramatically in less than 5 years, and technology is doing some crazy things, not the least of which is leveling the playing field when it comes to communicating your message to the world. Any kid in the world can drop a beat on YouTube in about 5 minutes and go viral when it used to take whole record companies to get a single out. You now have more publishing power in your cell phone than entire companies had 30 years ago. So that's it's good and bad news. Every 30 minutes, over 18,000 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube, and that's their statistic, not mine. And a lot of it is music-based. While it's cool that anyone can showcase their music there, what we've lost is quality control. There's no A&R guy like John Mays at YouTube who's filtering out all the bad stuff, managing the content that's flooding the world. So we're just really awash in a sea of mediocrity. What entire companies used to oversee and procure has now become a free-for-all that leaves us wondering where the good old days of songwriting went. This is also the culprit behind the homogenization of worship and the questionable doctrines and dumbed-down lyrics that we've descended into in worship over the last decade. It's no wonder pastors are just all up in arms about the doctrine in our songs. Global pastors bring great word and doctrine, but it doesn't always trickle down to the worship bands making big commercial-sounding worship albums. And sadly for us all, the goal has shifted from providing the church with the most powerful and biblical songs, though that is an incredibly subjective measure, hear me on that, to songs that can work primarily on commercial radio and climb the charts on Christian Copyright Licensing International. And talk about a divisive subject. Which song is more anointed and powerful than another? We could argue all day and into the next 2 weeks over that one. Seriously. I tend to look for the songs that stand the test of time, those songs that endure and have something valuable to say in each generation, and not just a song that's got a good beat and it's easy to dance to, which is fun too. I love it all. I grew up in a home where we heard everything from Flatt and Scruggs to Mahler, so I'm an eclectic listener and appreciate something about all types of music. I love Bethel. I love Hillsong and Vertical and Gateway. I love hymns and the Gettys and everything in between. I love Michael W. Smith and Kerry Jobe and a bunch of great CCM artists like Zach Williams and 10th Avenue North and on and on. They're all great people, all great music, and wonderful ministries. We need them all, right? Music, life, God is just diverse. Music and life would just be very boring without all the varieties and the spices we get to enjoy. We never force our songwriters here at NCS into any specific mold, but we encourage each of them to discover their own voice and write as God directs them. Each writer is unique and has their own message as it flows out of their relationship with Christ, shaped by their culture and level of musicianship and communication skills. In the end, what we do is increase the skill levels of our songwriters to catch up with the spirit level. So let me bring it back to the topic of what success is for you. Success at its core is the ability to communicate your message clearly and effectively to the largest number of people possible for you. I want to say that again. I think that's probably worth the whole price of the podcast here. Success for songwriters is, at its core, the ability to communicate your message clearly and effectively to the largest number of people possible for you, right? I like to say it like this. I can't give you any more talent than God did. I can't give you any more anointing than God does. I can't make you be a different person, but we definitely can increase the skill level, the understanding. I think I'm going to say it 3 times here. Success for songwriters is, at its core, the ability to communicate your message clearly and effectively to the largest number of people possible for you. You're unique. God's thumbprint is different on you than on everybody else. You've got your context, your calling, your talents, your abilities. Now you need the skills to rise to communicate to the people that God is wanting you to communicate to. Well, let's talk about 4 basic categories of songwriters that we work with here at NCS. Worship leaders, singer-songwriters, aspiring CCM artists, and some non-performing songwriters. First, let's talk about worship leaders in the local church, no matter the size congregation. I remember hearing the early Hillsong records when Shout to the Lord was brand new and wanting to have my local church in Nashville start making records too, just like Hillsong was doing. I and a number of other songwriters were in that church, so I started encouraging us to write songs for our church, and it sparked a revival of sorts in worship writing to the point that I did 3 recordings with the church and got us a record deal that extended well beyond my time there. You can still search for Bethel Chapel, not Bethel in California, but Bethel Chapel in Nashville, and find some great music from the early 90s that helped pioneer some of the local church worship recordings. Hosanna Integrity Music was going strong and beginning the wave of worship recording as well, and became the gold standard we all admired and hoped to emulate. I went to Integrity in 92 and had the privilege of working under Don Moen's leadership there, a great friend to this day, and helping oversee over 200 projects and manage 18 full-time songwriters and about 20 employees, as well as travel and teach and record a couple of my own records with them. It was in so many ways a zenith for me, a tremendous time that I cherish to this day. So I got to see the very local and the very global and how the songs make all the difference. When we're working with worship leaders, their goal is always to be heard by the world, but if it ain't working at home, it ain't going to work for the rest of us. And here's the number one thing worship songwriters need to be heard by a larger audience. Break the mold. Okay? Originality is by far the greatest rarity in worship songwriting. Chris Tomlin was original in the beginning. All Sons and Daughters, David and Leslie, they were very original in the beginning. David Crowder was original in the beginning, and on and on. Not that they're not still original, but we know them now. We're used to the new sound that they brought, right? If you're old enough to remember, Elvis and the Beatles were original in the beginning, as was Michael Jackson and Prince and Lady Gaga, and every standout artist that we've known through the years. The artists and songwriters who make an impression are the ones who break the mold to stand out from the crowd, and that's what worship songwriters need to do to refresh the ears of all of us who've grown pretty weary of the same worship phrases being used over and over and over. It's really hard to talk about being in the presence of God without saying, here we are in the presence of God, right? But that's what makes you original, being able to refresh familiar concepts with fresh language. One of my favorite examples of this is All Sons and Daughters' song, Brokenness Aside. And on a recent podcast interview with David Leonard, we talked about his new record, The Wait, and its accompanying short film that is visually and sonically stunning. Man, this is so good. You can get it right there on YouTube, The Wait, W-A-I-T. It's a very unique approach to worship songwriting that I think everybody should check out. I mean, it's just very, very cool. So let's move on. If you're a singer-songwriter, the challenge is to be original too, but not so weird that a lot of people can't relate. Right? Originality isn't just being weird. When I work with singer-songwriters, I'm always coaching towards some breakout songs that work like iconic singer-songwriters like Jewel or the Indigo Girls or Andrew Ripp or my friend Allie Matthews, who is an award-winning Canadian artist that I recommend you check out. She's more on the folky singer-songwriter side, right? Not as much rock, pop, but more folky. I love her so much. Hi, Allie. You got to come on the show. Originality is when you can bring different influences together in a fresh new way and communicate something poignant and moving to an audience. If you want a smaller audience, be obscure, opaque, and make your listeners work very hard to understand what you're even talking about. Few people obtain the cult status of a Leonard Cohen, for instance, though some do over a long period of time. Artsiness is great, but be prepared for fewer people to relate. It sounds condescending, but songs are like books, and authors know that you have got to write at about a 7th grade level if you want to win a larger audience. Your listeners don't want to work hard to get you. They want an experience with you and feel something besides confusion when you're singing your song to them, right? Have you ever felt that? Just like, I don't even know what they're even talking about. I feel that sometimes. Live music producer Tom Jackson teaches at our workshops, and he brilliantly demonstrates that audiences come to feel something in your concerts. They're like all of us, they're carrying a lot of baggage and they're worried about what they're facing in life. And if you can give them an emotional experience, they'll run to the record table in the back of the room. If you're just opaquely venting some kind of artistic spew on them, they'll be confused and they'll walk away scratching their heads. Your listeners rarely have master's degrees in language, much less PhDs in art. They want to feel something, you guys. They want to experience something that transcends their day-to-day worries and helps them come alive again, even if just for a minute. And that's what sells merchandise and makes your songs win. That's how you monetize this stuff, right? Give people what they need in that moment. But if you don't know the kind of moments you're trying to create, your songs will just meander and be completely ineffective at hitting the target of their hearts. You see, more people are in love with the idea of writing great songs than who will actually work hard at learning how to do it. So singers-songwriters need to decide while writing their songs what kind of moments they want to create, and they'll win a broader audience that way. Tom Jackson teaches that every time at our workshop and is so stellar. As for aspiring CCM artists, the rule is all radio. When you have a little time, scroll back through our archives and check out the most downloaded episode in our history, the one called How to Make It in the Christian Music Business with Centricity Music's founder and A&R director, John Mays, that I've been talking about here. In that episode, John breaks down the realities of what Christian radio programmers demand and how the whole thing is geared toward its avatar or its specific listener demographic, a female, probably a mom they imagine is Becky, who's managing a marriage, kids, career, home, church, and is the quintessential soccer mom type. Becky needs encouragement to make it through her day, and that's why networks like K-Love and others stick with music that's positive and uplifting. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's essentially X's out all moody, introspective, lamenting, or down kinds of songs that depressed and artsy artists and songwriters, singer-songwriters love to sing. John tells a story of letting CCM artist Jason Gray put the song about his divorce on an album called Death Without a Funeral. That's the name of the song, not the album. It's a stunning song, but it'll never be on radio, and it really doesn't promote album sales, but it really was something he needed to say. So it is a crazy, crazy good song. So if you're wanting to be heard at radio, you craft the kinds of positive and uplifting messages and melodies that can play on air easily and win for the programmers, DJs, listeners like Becky, and ultimately for the record company and you as the artist. If you think that's a compromise, maybe it's not for you until you can go out and build your own alternate radio network instead of complaining about the ones we have. I mean, that was kind of snarky, but it's true. Don't criticize and curse the ministries of others. Go build your own. And finally, stay-at-home songwriters or non-performing songwriters hoping to have artists sing your songs. It's a tough one. As I said earlier, almost every artist has gotten into the songwriting thing. That's cool for them as they learn to craft their heart's message with the help of skilled craftsmen like Tony Wood or Michael Farron or Kenna Turner West or Jason Ingram and Paul Mayberry. Men and women who are highly skilled in hearing what the artist wants to say and helping them craft those messages like scribes into hit songs that sell records and build ministries. Ain't nothing wrong with being on a team like that, but if you're just starting your songwriting journey, you got to learn how to be a phenomenal songwriter before you're ever invited to that table. You're in the right place if you want to do that because we have so many amazing resources for you here at NCS, like our monthly membership, this podcast, our Song Revolution workshop, and our group and personal coaching programs. There are some marvelous songwriters who aren't performers who are doing very well at it, like our friend Sue C. Smith. That's Sue and the initial C, not Susie, but Sue C. Smith. There's a fantastic episode in our archives with Sue. She lives in the St. Louis area, but travels to Nashville every other week to write, and she's had 90 musicals published, you guys, 90. And I don't even know how many hit songs or songs that she's had recorded in general, but she's just a monster writer. She's amazing. She's been at it a long time, and it's her work. This is what she does full time. She and Kenna and a handful of others, man, they're on it. They're at it, right? Another songwriter who's had so many songs recorded and published so much that her publishers made her start using pseudonyms is Claire Cloninger, who wrote for Word Music for decades. She's a total non-performer, but wrote thousands of songs and had hit after hit and musical after musical like Sue did. I mean, it can be done, but you've got to start by doing more than dreaming about it. You have to educate yourself, get into the vicinity of what you want to do through our coaching, and take some bold steps for yourself to figure out what it takes, how these other people have done it, and get started. I've just got to start, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. If you're wondering if it's too late for you, well, that's a decision only you can make. I mean, when is the best time to plant a tree? Well, 20 years ago. Well, when is the next best time to plant a tree? It's today, right? I talk to people every single day and they say, well, I'm 57 years old, or I'm 59 years old, or I'm 42 years old, and it's too late for me. No, it's not too late for you. It's only too late when you decide it's too late. I mean, let's get realistic about this. Are you going to go be Lauren Daigle? Well, probably not. But who can you be? Who has God made you to be? My stay-at-home, non-performing, aspiring songwriters need to make work of it now. Take it seriously and make it more than a hobby. Get the training you need to begin to build a business around your songwriting. There are all kinds of ways to monetize your songs if you have something people want. And that's always the key, putting others ahead of yourself and learning to write what can actually bless and transform other people's lives instead of just getting your jollies out and being focused on what you want to get. Do you really have anything to say? Have you thought anything about why you want to write? Is it to feel good about yourself, to meet some unmet expectations from childhood, to please someone who didn't think you'd amount to anything? My stay-at-home, non-performing aspiring songwriters, and really everyone I'm talking to today, needs to wake up and take some bold steps toward getting the resources you need to write at higher levels if you hope to become more successful and reach more goals. That's just a mindset you can't afford not to have. I mean, as the saying goes, become a student and the teacher will appear. It's just so true. Set an inner intention to improve, and your inner radar will guide you to the right next step. God will make sure you get the right next step. For many of you listening, the next right step is to join NCS membership, to get into community with like-minded songwriters and creatives to encourage you and resource you and help you stop feeling so lonely in this calling. You learn so much by being part of NCS, and it's the least you can do for yourself, seriously. If you're unwilling to invest less than $20 a month in your songwriting, in my opinion, you're just not serious enough to become an amazing songwriter. If you're still fantasizing about being discovered as a hit songwriter and you're not even part of a community like this, you're just spinning wheels and wasting precious time. And you got to start moving towards your dreams, and NCS membership. Okay, big commercial. It's just a great way to do it. No shaming here. It's just the truth. I wish I had an NCS membership back when I was starting out. I'd have 800, 1,000 songs recorded. You know, every typewriter that I've talked about today is responsible for yourself. You guys are responsible for yourself and how you present to the world. No one's coming to do it for you. There's a motivational speaker I listen to named Lisa Nichols, and she says, you are your own rescue. I love that because we Christian songwriters are secretly hoping God's going to drop all of our songs on us and open all the doors to our success. But there's a time and a place for motivating yourself to the success you want and making sure you've got the goods to become successful at it. And that's why we're here. We're called to help you. Success looks different to everyone. So what's your version? What are you called to do, and how are you pursuing it in real time? Are you investing in yourself and your songwriting, or just hoping someone will come along to discover you and make you a success? There's a success coach I love. His name is Rich Litvin, and he says, most people live a reported on life, a life full of excuses, a life that happens to them. Yet a few people learn to live a created life, a life that is created by them. I think the only thing that I would add to that is that we Christians, we do co-create with God. We are getting the direction, but then we motivate ourselves to go fulfill that which God has called us to. In my experience, the people who set goals and intentions and get really clear about what they want and why they want it come the closest to getting it. If God's really called you to do this, it's high time you go after it. Hey, I've loved being with you here today on the show and hope you'll join me and some amazing guests coming up in the weeks ahead. We love doing this, and we know that there's so much value here. And as always, you're personally invited to come hang out with me and some amazing people at the upcoming Song Revolution workshop here in Nashville, October 17 through 19, and I hope to see you in NCS membership soon. Go check out everything at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We want nothing less than for you to become the songwriter you were born to be. I'm John Chisum. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening in today on the Song Revolution podcast. If you're wanting to take your songwriting to the next level, be sure to jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com right now to check out all the valuable resources that we have there for you, especially NCS membership, where you can go deeper into a community of like-minded songwriters and tap into encouraging blogs, videos, powerful masterclasses, and a whole lot more to get you where you really want to go. I'll see you next time.